conference on Greece and Africa, on the broader issues really of shaping the future of our relationship, not just the Greek relationship with the people of Africa, but of the entire global South. I think it is a conversation that needs to be had. I want to thank the university specifically for putting together this important dialogue. At a moment when the international system is under immense strain, spaces like this are important. They become critically important and safe spaces for us to think about how then the next 100 years in foreign relations, in diplomacy are going to look like. Across the world, we are witnessing the return of geopolitical competition, fragmentation, multilateralism, widening inequality, climate vulnerability, forced migration, debt distress, technological disruption. Yet, we are also witnessing something else, the growing agency of the global South. As we speak right now in my capital, in Nairobi, there is ongoing a large Africa Forward Summit, which is an Africa-France convening, where we are currently hosting, I think, 30-something heads of state. And we're having, again, this conversation of what does the global South want to structure its relationships with other parts of the world going forward. I want to appreciate a number of the comments that the Deputy Minister made, especially around conversations with Africa, the idea that Africa is not a homogeneous space that you paint with one broad stroke. And to say then that within that reality, Africa is an important actor in international relations, and one that people only ignore at their own peril. Some of the things that I wanted to say, the Deputy Minister has actually talked about, including the large numbers of not just people, but potential markets within the African continent, the structure of the African Free Trade Area that makes this a market that anybody ignores at their own peril, and so on. But also to say that in this changing global reality, partnerships between Africa and countries such as Greece, who are fairly connected to us, matter deeply. So Greece sits at the intersection of Europe, the Mediterranean, Africa, the Middle East. Kenya similarly sits at the crossroads of Eastern Africa and the Indian Ocean and the world. Historically, our people have always been connected by trade, by mobility, by maritime exchange and cultural encounter. And today we have an opportunity to transform those historic linkages into strategic partnerships for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the defining features, I think, of our century will be human mobility. Migration is often discussed through the language of crisis, or border control, or securitization. But for many countries, especially those that are in spaces such as we are standing today, mobility has been what has built those cultures and those civilizations. In the global South, mobility is also about aspiration, knowledge exchange, innovation, and shared prosperity. For Kenya, the diaspora is not a peripheral community. And as I heard from what the Deputy Minister said, the Greek diaspora in parts of Africa is also a critical actor. For us, the diaspora is an integral part of our national development architecture. The government of Kenya recognizes the diaspora as a strategic national asset and a key pillar of development policy. Today, we have more than 4 million Kenyans living and working abroad against our national population of something like 54 million people. Their contribution to our economy and our national development is well felt everywhere around the world. In 2025 alone, diaspora remittances were $5 billion US. Let me contextualize that number a little bit. $5 billion US dollars is about 3% of Kenya's GDP. $5 billion of diaspora remittances were larger than our usual earnings, forex that we get from tourism, from horticulture, from flowers, from coffee, from tea, and all of the other things that you know us for selling, apart from our marathoners. But that's a conversation for another day, now that I am standing in the city that has the Olympic stadium. So diaspora engagement, and I noticed that the conversation was around diplomatic dialogues, multilateral cooperation, and so on, and I wanted to zero in on something within diplomatic conversations around diaspora engagement. There is much more than remittances, and diaspora engagement is much more than this migration thing that I'm talking about. It's about knowledge transfer, it's about network transfer, it's about technology exchange, it's about cultural diplomacy. It's about shaping narratives of ourselves in other parts of the world. Diaspora diplomacy, according to me, is one of the most important ways of creating connections with people from other parts of the world. Indeed, Kenya's evolving diaspora strategy seeks to move away from seeing migration merely as labor export or labor migration towards viewing mobility as a part of a broader ecosystem of human capital development, investment, innovation, transnational citizenship, and cultural diplomacy. This is why Kenya has strengthened its institutional mechanisms for diaspora engagement, including the establishment of this State Department that I lead, with a mandate to protect the welfare and rights of Kenyans around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, the conversation on Africa and the Global South must also confront conversations or issues around the dignity in mobility, must confront issues of opportunity, and so on. Very often, migration is probably one of the most polarizing issues in different parts of the world. If there is a boogeyman in international relations right now, it's probably migration, right? So if you want to start a fire, just say migration, and then very quickly there'll be two camps, right? So there will be the migration positive people, and there will be the securitization type approaches. But I would like to invite us today to think about migration or the formation of diasporas in a much more nuanced, or using a much more nuanced lens. What if we saw people coming to live among us as bringing a little bit of their culture for us to understand, to enjoy, as a window into their world? What if we saw people leaving our own countries to go elsewhere as people going to work hard and maybe solve the problems back home? What if we saw them as a channel for networks, for technology, for investment, and so on? What if we started to see the bodies of migrants as sites for opportunity? Kenya has placed significant emphasis on partnerships, on skills recognition, on bilateral labor agreements and migrant welfare frameworks, again, to help us reshape these ideas of what migration could look like. As a country that is at the meeting point of so many of those things that we have discussed, Greece being an entry point, or a point also of departure for trade, for migration, and so on, it is also a conversation that we invite then Greece to also have with us and with others as we think about what potentially could, what migration could offer the people of the world. Distinguished guests, multilateral cooperation today must also become much more equitable. We must have conversations around what it will take for multilateralism to survive. In the last few years, perhaps more than any other time in the past, we have seen a real challenge to multilateralism and to the international world rule-based order. What will it take for multilateralism to survive? It must reform. It must become more representative. It must become more inclusive. And again, these are ideas that we need to have and frame as we have conversations between, for example, Greece and Africa as we are having today. Africa's youthful population, maybe let me pause there and give one of my most interesting factoids that I like to speak about. The median age in Kenya is 19. Cool. The median age across Africa is 20. That is to say that if you were to get every African and put them on a line, the midpoint would be 20. So in our conversations with an extremely youthful population like that, what ought we have at the back of our minds? I propose that conversations that engage such a youthful population must have the future in mind. It must be interesting for countries like this to think about. It must focus on education, technology, culture, the things the young people care about. Let me give another little piece of information there. For a country like mine that has a median age of 19, it means that the most of our expenditure, for example, is on education. We spend 33% of our entire budget on education. Why? Because we are a country of largely children. You have to spend money educating people, and that should frame, or at the very least should inform, our own thoughts as we get into conversations with Africa, for example, where you have this extremely youthful population, strategic geography, critical minerals, creative economy, innovation, and so on, as we think about co-creating, again, borrowing a word that was used by my colleague, co-creating that future together. The challenge before us, therefore, is not whether Africa participates in the new global order. It is whether that global order is prepared to evolve towards a true partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, allow me to emphasize this one point. The future of the Global South cooperation will not be built in conference rooms. It is not a conversation that is built in a ministry and then given to the rest of the world, or in government communiques. It is built through people-to-people ties. It is built through educational exchange, through mobility, cultural dialogue, entrepreneurship, innovation, solidarity. And for this, I think diasporas around the world will continue to play a critical role in the building of that future cooperation. So Kenya stands ready to deepen partnerships with Greece, with the rest of Europe, and with partners across the Global South in pursuit of a more humane, inclusive, cooperative international order that we will be part architects in. I'm hoping that this conference then is not simply a conversation about the challenges. Let it also be a conversation around the possibilities, but importantly about how to get it done. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.